Chapter 71. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Jiang family had a reputation for being arrogant and bossy. Even before their ancestor became a god king, their domineering ways were infamous throughout the Han and Qin empires. Bai Yueling picked a fight with Jiang Baiwei because she couldn't stand her arrogance and the way she belittled ordinary cultivators. But now, what were the Xianin Pavilion disciples witnessing? The Jiang family was acting respectful and humble towards the Gu family. Were they seeing things? Could this Gu family be that powerful, with some kind of incredible background? Fairy Lu wondered, but she'd seen with her own eyes that Gu Yuan, the head of the family, was only at the ordinary Xianwang level. If the family head was only that strong, how powerful could the Gu family really be? While the Xianin Pavilion disciples were still trying to figure things out, Jiang Baiwei bit back her words, glancing at the Gu family. They were seated next to the Jiangs, but clearly kept their distance. They didn't even acknowledge the Jiang family members who had given up their seats. Inwardly, she didn't dare complain, and even proactively greeted Jiang Lianxin, "Sister, you're here too." Jiang Lianxin didn't even bother to turn her head, just grunted in response. As far as Jiang Lianxin was concerned, after the Jiang family had used her as a pawn in a marriage, she was done with them. Especially since they'd tried to forcibly take away the Yunqi siblings. In her heart, they were complete strangers. Reconciliation? Not a chance. The Jiang family might be sucking up to the Gu family now, but that's only because the Gu family had power. And because she'd gotten her spirit bones back and was valuable again. If she didn't have a great husband, well, Jiang Lianxin sneered to herself. Jiang Baiwei knew she was treading on thin ice and didn't dare say anything else. The people of Xianin Pavilion were stunned. "Sister. Is that Jiang Lianxin? The Jiang family's amazing genius who had her spirit bones destroyed and was married off to some backwater town? But it doesn't look like her spirit bones were destroyed. Could it be that they were restored?" That the speculation ran wild. Dong. Dong. Dong, star. A distant bell rang out across the venue, instantly silencing the noise. Suddenly, in the center of the arena, an old man wearing the robes of a Kanglan Holy Land elder appeared. He stood on the high platform, radiating a pressure that only a god king could wield. God King realm. And this feels way stronger than our ancestor. That everyone in the Jiang family held their breath. Everyone in the venue, except for the monks from the Holy Land, were filled with awe. This asterisk was the true foundation of the Holy Land. Any elder could wield the power of a god king, and judging by his presence, this one was at the late stage god king level or even higher. It seems everyone's here. So I won't waste any time. Everyone knows the rules of the Southern Grand Ceremony. Whoosh, star. With that, the old man landed. Around the central high platform, arenas began to rise, one after another. A total of 18 arenas formed a ring, surrounding the central platform and spreading outwards. All participating geniuses can enter these 18 arenas. The winner stays, the loser retreats. Each person only gets one challenge. Let the games begin. As the old man spoke, he stepped down. Whoosh. Whoosh. Whoosh, star. Around the venue, the geniuses from various factions, unable to contain their excitement any longer, leapt onto the stages. For example, the Han and Qin Empire. Their strongest force was the Jiang family, whose ancestor had only reached god king status in recent years. Coming to this southern ceremony was really just going through the motions, but there were others who, while not as powerful as the major holy places, had veteran god kings in their clans and sects. Their kids were all eager to prove themselves. The 18 stages were immediately filled, and battles broke out everywhere. In these kinds of battles, the geniuses pulled out all the stops, so each fight ended quickly. The fastest ones could wrap it up in the time it took to burn a stick of incense. The slower fights might take a quarter of an hour. Soon, many geniuses were leaving the stage in defeat, and some of those still standing were already starting to tire. Seeing this, the few geniuses from the Han and Qin empires who had been selected to participate couldn't sit still any longer. "Master, clan leader. Let's go." Immediately, several geniuses from Han and Qin and other major powers jumped onto the stages. They picked targets that were already showing signs of fatigue. These defending geniuses had been targeted by many opponents. The Han-Qin Empire had gotten the jump on everyone, which made some people salty. Those three really got lucky. Looking at the three lucky Han-Qin geniuses, many southern factions, their young geniuses, and even the elders leading the teams were a little envious. Some elders started asking around, does anyone know anything about the Han-Qin Empire? In their opinion, these geniuses from the Han-Qin Empire were so confident that they could win the rings. If they could win, it would be good to plan their next strategy. However, within a stick of incense, these three were knocked off the stage by their opponents in a disheveled state, embarrassing the cultivators of the Han-Qin Empire. Even the members of the Han-Qin royal family couldn't sit still. They felt the cultivators around them were looking at them with a hint of mockery. I'll go. At that moment, a young man in white stood up in the Han-Qin royal formation. He didn't have time to pay attention to the three failures. The one who rushed to the stage at that moment was the greatest prodigy of this generation of the Han-Qin royal family. The third prince of Han-Qin, who had reached the 7th level of the Calamity Realm. He chose as his opponent a young man with a sword who looked like he was on his last legs, who had just thrown a Han-Qin prodigy off the stage. The Han-Qin Empire had lost 3 games in a row and was about to lose face. Therefore, although he felt it was a bit much, the third prince of Han-Qin wanted to save face and win a place for the empire, so he picked the opponent who seemed easiest to deal with. However, boom. After a tug of war, the third prince of Han-Qin was knocked off the ring by the sword-wielding boy from the old-fashioned God-King force. A total loss. So far, the entire Han-Qin Empire had lost 4 games, and the geniuses who were qualified to fight again were completely shocked by their more powerful peers. Is the gap really that big? Looks like we're here just to watch. The cultivators of Han-Qin lowered their heads, embarrassed to show their faces. Even Jiang Baiwei was faintly shaken and didn't dare go on the stage again. She was naturally qualified to fight, but she didn't have the courage to risk it. After all, if she lost in front of everyone, how could the #1 prodigy of Han and Qin ever show her face again? The Han and Qin Empire fell into a speechless silence, making the surrounding factions look at them with increasing amusement. At that moment, a cold female voice quietly sounded in the seats of the Han and Qin Empire, "Master, I'm going on stage." Chapter 72. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as the voice echoed, a vision of loveliness descended. A figure, graceful and light, floated down, her white dress like freshly fallen snow, landing in the arena. It was Bai Yueling, the saint of Xianin Pavilion. But she wasn't targeting the exhausted champion from the Han-Qin Empire's previous showdown. Instead, she chose a formidable opponent, a ring winner who had already dominated 2 rounds, a warrior that no one dared challenge. Seeing yet another genius from the Han-Qin Empire step forward, many onlookers turned up their noses. Even cultivators from within the Han-Qin Empire itself shook their heads, unimpressed. After all, Bai Yueling hadn't even been able to defeat Jiang Baiwei, and Jiang Baiwei herself was too intimidated to enter the ring. What was the point of Bai Yueling going up now? Plus, choosing such a tough adversary. This fight seemed like a foregone conclusion, a hopeless endeavor. Even Gu Yuan couldn't help but fret. He remembered the kindness Xianin Pavilion had shown his family. He looked at Gu Changqing, worry etching his features. "Qing'er, what do you think of this Xianin Pavilion saint?" Gu Changqing smiled reassuringly. "Father, don't worry. She'll win this one." Gu Changqing's words stunned many Han-Qin Empire cultivators. Outsiders, though, cast sarcastic glances his way. One couldn't resist a jab. "You clearly don't know who this genius from your Han-Qin Empire is challenging. That's the eldest prince of the Dayue dynasty. The Dayue dynasty boasts 2 powerful god kings in their palace. This prince has been personally trained by a god king since birth. His strength is beyond anything you can imagine in your backwater kingdom." He was cut short by a collective gasp. He looked up, eyes widening in disbelief. There on the stage, the great Yu dynasty's eldest prince was already reeling under the sonic assault of Bai Yueling's music. Without a single exchange of blows, she had swept him off the stage, eliminating him. The entire process didn't even take a moment. How is this possible? Silence fell, then, the Han Qin Empire's cultivators erupted in cheers. As expected of the Saint of Xianin Pavilion. Xianin Pavilion is indeed the top hidden sect of our Han Qin, that the Jiang family didn't appreciate the cheers, especially Jiang Baiwei, whose face twisted with displeasure, staring at Bai Yueling on stage. She seethed inwardly. Outdone by Jiang Lianqin was one thing, but now, surpassed by Bai Yueling. Unacceptable, Gu Changqing smiled, his gaze briefly meeting that of the earlier naysayer. The man flushed crimson, sinking back into his seat, shamefaced but still resentful. Hearing the Han Qin Empire's continued cheering, he muttered under his breath, a sour note in his voice. One victory. What's the big deal? Don't you see what's coming? The General King-level forces are about to be cleared out. Next, it's the Emperor-level clan's turn. How many rounds can some lucky nobody from a small place last against the scions of those Emperor-level families? And he was right. Soon after Bai Yueling's victory, she faced another daunting challenger. As the grumpy spectator predicted, this super genius, hailing from an Emperor-level force, immediately revealed his cultivation upon stepping into the arena, the 9th level of the Tribulation realm. Typically, even geniuses from established God-King forces only reach the 8th level. This is it. The end of the line. I know him. I've heard terrifying tales about him in Han and Qin. He's from the Flame Dragon dynasty, their eldest prince. Rumor has it he's incredibly cruel. He uses his peers as stepping stones, torturing them to death or crippling them in brutal battles. Some Han Qin cultivators recognized him, fear gripping them. They instinctively urged Fairy Lu to call Bai Yueling back. Losing to someone like this wasn't just a defeat. But Fairy Lu simply smiled, her eyes shining with confidence. The Flame Dragon Prince was only at the 9th level of the Tribulation realm. Her disciple had already stepped into the Half-King realm. Even if they were evenly matched, her disciple would hold her own. Not to mention the level difference, realm suppression, talent suppression, and while Xianin Pavilion couldn't match the Emperor-level force's legacies, Bai Yueling had mastered the ancient teachings, so she had a shot. How could Bai Yueling possibly lose? Sure enough, after a fierce battle, Bai Yueling pushed the bloodthirsty Flame Dragon Prince to the edge of the ring. All eyes were glued to the scene. No one expected this outcome. They stared at Bai Yueling with awe. The Flame Dragon Prince's expression grew ice-cold. Feeling the gazes on him, he roared and lunged at Bai Yueling. He was betting it all on an exchange of blows, even if it meant trading death for injury. He died. Bai Yueling was injured. But the Flame Dragon Prince wasn't afraid. Given his status, Bai Yueling would never dare to kill him. He was right, Bai Yueling didn't dare, but her strength far exceeded his expectations. Biting her lip, Bai Yueling raised her hand. The guqin lifted into the air. Spiritual energy danced across the strings, producing a cascade of notes that solidified into beams of light. Striking the Flame Dragon Prince, he was blasted backward, tumbling out of the ring, coughing up blood, and collapsing into unconsciousness. She won. Saint Yueling won. The Han Qin Empire cultivators erupted into cheers, which abruptly died in their throats. All eyes were locked on the unconscious Flame Dragon Prince. Panic filled their eyes. Even Bai Yueling looked alarmed. From the Flame Dragon dynasty's seats, several figures stormed forward, radiating power, and quickly carried the prince back to begin treatment. In the front row, a golden-armored God King, radiating command, rose, his eyes burning with anger. He unleashed his aura like a crushing mountain, targeting Bai Yueling on stage. You dare injure him so severely? Kneel and apologize. The pressure of the God King was immense. He was an experienced God King, a master cultivator, the kind that only those at the later stages could possess. It descended like a mountain, overwhelming Bai Yueling, leaving her helpless. Instantly, Fairy Lu of the Xianin Pavilion appeared on stage. She waved her hand, playing a celestial melody that formed a protective light curtain. Her power was no match for the God King's might. Not even Fairy Qin herself could withstand the might of the elderly God King. In an instant, the light curtain shattered. Fairy Lu stumbled back, coughing up blood. The whole ordeal happened within a blink. Seeing Fairy Lu cough blood, the God King's rage subsided somewhat, but his gaze at the Xianin pavilion was still chilling. At such a young age, you are so vicious. After the southern ceremony, I will see how your Xianin pavilion disciplines its disciples. That the God King sat down, pale. Bai Yueling knew she had caused a major problem. Silence fell. Many southern cultivators looked sympathetically at the Xianin pavilion. Some, still stinging from Bai Yueling's earlier victory, were secretly pleased. The Han Qin forces, previously so proud, now wore complicated expressions. Some seemed genuinely worried, others quietly distanced themselves from the Xianin pavilion. The Jiang family was among the latter. Bai Yueling felt a chill in her heart. Seeing the blood on her master's lip, she felt deep remorse. Master, I've brought trouble upon our sect. After the ceremony, I'll go to the Flame Dragon dynasty and apologize. Even if it costs me my life, I won't let them take their anger out on the Xianin pavilion. Silly girl, this isn't your fault. Fairy Lu shook her head, offering a sad smile. Swords have no eyes in the arena. Victory is earned. Blame me for being too weak. That's why they bully you, causing you to lose even when you win. Fairy Lu spoke firmly. She resolved to find a way to send Yu Ling away once the ceremony ended. That way, even if Xianin Pavilion truly suffered, Bai Yueling could one day rebuild it. Suddenly, a cold voice cut through the silence from the Han Qin Empire's banquet. Settle accounts with Xianin Pavilion after the southern ceremony? How quaint. Just how shameless can you Yanlong dynasty people be? In the arena, swords have no eyes. Life and death are in the hands of the combatants. You know this when you take to the stage. Your Yanlong prince asked for it. Did he actually think everyone in the venue was blind to his plan? Gu Changqing's tone was calm but icy. His gaze, fixed on the Yanlong dynasty delegation, sent a shiver through them. The God King's face darkened, and he glared at Gu Changqing. Young man. Don't make false accusations. The moment he spoke, the God King's aura surged, slamming into Gu Changqing. Fairy Lu gasped. She hadn't expected Gu Changqing to defend the Xianin Pavilion, but she didn't want the Gu family to suffer the same fate. But then, Fairy Lu and those Han Qin cultivators, indeed, everyone in the area, stared in disbelief. Junior, Gu Changqing sneered. Old man, who are you calling junior? Chapter 73. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The moment the words landed. Boom, a dragon-like energy surged from Gu Changqing, clashing head-on with the Flame Dragon Dynasty God King's aura. Bang, the God King's mountain-like presence shattered instantly under Gu Changqing's power. He stumbled backward, a look of sheer terror in his eyes. A God King? Is there really an old monster at least in the late stages of God King hiding in this small fry Han Qin Empire? He could barely believe it, the Han Qin Empire. What a backwater. There were hundreds of little empires like that in the south alone. Normally, they'd be lucky to have someone in the early stages of God King. A heavenly king was practically royalty. But now, out of nowhere, Gu Changqing, the God King, was stunned and immediately felt intimidated. The spectators were even more speechless, especially the Jiang family patriarch. To everyone else, Gu Changqing seemed like an old monster who had somehow retained a youthful appearance, having cultivated for nearly 1,000 years, but he knew the truth about Gu Changqing's age. He wasn't an old monster. He was a freaking prodigy. And, the Jiang patriarch subconsciously gripped his sleeves, staring at Gu Changqing in the distance. He knew that just a year ago, Gu Changqing was nowhere near God King level. Yet, in just 1 year, this kid had closed the gap. That kind of talent. Calling him a monster didn't even begin to cover it. On the nearby platform, Fairy Lu, Bai Yueling, and the other elders and disciples of the Xianin Pavilion were all stunned. Their eyes were wide, fixed on Gu Changqing as he confronted the Flame Dragon Dynasty God King. His righteous fury, his ability to make the God King back down, Fairy Lu's heart fluttered. She thought back to their intervention in Winged Demon Canyon and couldn't help but chuckle to herself. Turns out we didn't need to do anything at all. The Xianin Pavilion was just sticking its nose where it didn't belong. Just as everyone was reeling from Gu Changqing's display of power, on the high platform in the center of the venue, the God King from Kanglan Holy Land, who was overseeing the event, finally spoke. Enough. Are you two seriously planning to throw down here at the southern ceremony? As the Kanglan Holy Land God King's words echoed, deep within Kanglan City, hidden in the sea of clouds where Kanglan Holy Land resided, several terrifying auras suddenly rose. If the Flame Dragon Dynasty God King's aura was like a pillar of light connecting heaven and earth, these auras were like bottomless chasms, capable of splitting the very world in two. Undoubtedly, these were the imperial-level powerhouses of Kanglan Holy Land, secretly maintaining order at the southern ceremony. Sensing those auras, the Flame Dragon Dynasty God King immediately looked for a way out. He harumphed, shot Gu Changqing a dark look, and spat out a face-saving threat. Very well, Han Qin Empire. This king will remember this. He didn't say another word, opting to settle accounts with Gu Changqing after the southern ceremony. The previous clash had already shown him that Gu Changqing was at least as strong as him, if not stronger. Gu Changqing was too lazy to even acknowledge him. Remember this? He'd like to introduce that old dog to his palm. If he didn't have more pressing things to do. Xianin Pavilion thanks Gu Shenwang for his assistance. Gu Changqing stopped his advance, Fairy Lu led by Yueling and the other Xianin Pavilion women in a bow. So, he wasn't here to compete in the southern competition. Bai Yueling mused. For some reason, learning how powerful Gu Changqing was stirred up a strange sense of loss within her. Gu Changqing waved dismissively, indicating that it was nothing, and turned his gaze toward the arena. As time passed, the prodigies in the ring grew stronger and stronger. Even the prodigies from Emperor-level forces weren't quite good enough. And super geniuses from various holy lands stepped into the spotlight. Prodigies from Emperor-level forces were generally at the 9th level of the Calamity Realm. Only a select few had reached the half-king level, but these holy land super geniuses were basically all in the semi-king realm, and not just barely, they were in the mid-stage, late stage, or even peak of the semi-king level. Just then. Boom! In the center of the venue, on the first stage, a figure floated down, instantly capturing the attention of every cultivator. That's Kanglan Saint Yuling Xian. On the stage, Yuling Xian, dressed in elegant robes, graceful and beautiful, looked down at her opponent with an arrogant expression. Facing her was another super genius from a holy land. He looked at Yuling Xian with a hint of fear, but as a genius from a holy land, he wasn't about to back down. Saint Yu, I've heard of your reputation, but it won't be easy to defeat me. With that, he took a step forward. Boom! The aura he exuded reached the late half-king level, earning him surprised glances from the onlookers. The late half-king stage was pretty high, however. Yuling Xian remained unfazed, her expression still haughty. She simply smiled coldly. Is that all you got? Don't you dare be arrogant in front of me. In a flash, Yuling Xian was upon the semi-king genius. She was so fast that he only felt a gust of wind before a palm slammed into him. Puff! The semi-king didn't even have time to react. Yuling Xian sent him flying off the stage, eliminating him. The audience was silent. Everyone stared at Yuling Xian in disbelief. They knew that as the Kanglan Holy Land saint and host of the Southern Grand Ceremony, Yuling Xian must be strong, but no one expected her to be this strong. To blast a late half-king away with a single palm? Could it be that she's about to break into the king realm? One genius whispered. Just when everyone was in shock, Yuling Xian surveyed the challengers, with disdain. Anyone else want to step up? Hearing her arrogant words, many other Holy Land talents couldn't contain themselves. Immediately, several super talents jumped into the ring. Their strength was supposedly higher than the talent that Yuling Xian blew out of the ring. Their final outcome was the same. All followed the footsteps of the first person. They had no power to fight back in front of Yuling Xian and were easily knocked off the stage by Yuling Xian. Eventually, the Holy Land prodigies no longer dared to fight. They looked at Yuling Xian with disbelief. not just because of Yu Lingxuan's record, more importantly, it was because of the strength that Yu Lingxian showed. Some of the super prodigies who came up later had already reached the pinnacle of the half-king stage, but they still had no chance against Yu Lingxian. They all knew what that meant. There was no question that Yu Lingxian had reached the king level. But a 23-year-old Xian king. The Holy Land prodigies felt a bit bitter. They'd thought the gap between them and Yu Lingxian wouldn't be too large, but without them knowing, Yu Lingxuan's strength had exceeded theirs. One the level of a half-king, the other has reached king realm. The difference was like night and day. No way around it. It helps to have a brother, one genius said. The Kanglan Saint's brother was 9th on the spirit list. He was even favored by the leaders of the Divine Emperor sect and accepted as a disciple. Common forces in the south would have to make great efforts to get that information. It was no secret to the major holy lands. Kanglan Holy Land even deliberately released it to intimidate them. The Divine Emperor sect, what was that? The strongest in the Kanglan Holy Land was the Emperor realm. The Divine Emperor realm could wipe them out in an instant. With that kind of brother, even a few dropped crumbs were worth more than all the southern Saint Land talents. Don't say that. Saint Yu's talent is also great. Someone said, not wanting to credit it all to her brother. The elders of Kanglan Holy Land smiled happily, looking at Saint Kanglan on the stage, who was expected to win the championship of the Southern Grand Ceremony. They were beaming from ear to ear. The geniuses and elders all complimented Yu Lingxian. Saint Yu is extraordinary. With such talent, her future achievements will catch up with the saint's brother. It's just around the corner for her to be on the spiritual list. Listening to the compliments, Yu Lingxian was feeling great and happy. She didn't care about the south, she wanted to follow in her brother's footsteps. Looking at the southern geniuses' awe, Yu Lingxian said proudly, the south is too shallow. I will be gone soon, and then you can fight over the so-called first place in the south. It's so boring when I have no opponents. Listening to her arrogant words, even the most arrogant super geniuses were angry. Yu Lingxian was being too crazy, but seeing Yu Lingxuan's Xian King cultivation on the stage, there was nothing they could do. The Gu family was watching, especially Jiang Lianxin. The news is really well hidden. I'm afraid only a few people know about my battle with Yu Lingxian. It seems that Saint Yu has forgotten the disaster that happened so many years ago. Jiang Lianxin whispered and stepped forward. Gu Qingchen could feel his mother's anger and leaped onto the stage. Old hag. Stop talking. I, the young master, will take care of you. Gu Qingchen's voice was childish, but his words were full of domineering, and attracted the audience. They were upset by Yu Lingxuan's arrogance. They heard Gu Qingchen scolding and felt relieved. Old hag, Yu Lingxian was angry. She was the saint of Kanglan Holy Land, and the elders were respectful. Who dared scold her? But seeing that Gu Qingchen was only 5 or 6 years old, she sneered. Where did this child come from? So rude. What, you don't dare come out and let a child make trouble? Yu Lingxuan's words were murderous. She wasn't going to attack Gu Qingchen. As the saint of Kanglan, it would be bad even if she won, but she was going to make the person behind him go on stage. If the other party didn't come out, she didn't mind capturing him and kill him back at the Holy Land. Dare to call her old hag? He wants to die. The southern cultivators changed color when they felt the murder from Yu Lingxian. Many spoke up. Stop causing trouble, get off the stage. Don't cause trouble for your parents, get off quickly. This is not a place for you to play. Brat. Everyone persuaded Gu Qingchen to get off the stage. No one thought that he was a competitor. When Gu Qingchen stepped onto the ring, they held their breath and were happy. They knew the talents of Gu Qingchen and Gu Yinxi, especially Jiang Baiwei. That day, in the Xianhuang secret realm, she saw Gu Qingchen's name on the list of the Heavenly Demon Monument. He was a peerless genius. On the stage, Gu Qingchen was even angrier and stared at Yu Lingxian. What, you bragged that you had no rivals in the south, but you don't have the courage to fight me? Everyone laughed. Fight with you? Yu Lingxian glanced at Gu Qingchen. She was sure that he was sent by a rival. If she fought with him, she would be in trouble. But she couldn't let him say what he wanted. Come. Help me take this child off the stage. After Yu Lingxian spoke, a figure flew down from the Kanglan city lord's mansion. Saint, don't worry. I will take him away. A half-king deacon from Kanglan city had a flattering face. He saw the murder towards Gu Qingchen on Yu Lingxuan's face. He came to capture Gu Qingchen and send him to the Holy Land. Yu Lingxian gave him a satisfied look, which made the deacon proud. He attacked Gu Qingchen. Boom! This deacon wanted to please Yu Lingxian, so his attack was vicious. Although it wasn't deadly, it could have hurt Gu Qingchen. Many turned away, not wanting to see Gu Qingchen's end. Gu Qingchen's eyes turned cold. You only let your minions fight. He roared, and instead of retreating, he rushed towards the half-king deacon. He blasted out his spiritual power. Bang! Just one strike. The deacon screamed and flew out of the ring, but no one cared about him. Everyone, including Yu Lingxian, looked at the child in disbelief. In their eyes, there was an unbelievable aura. This breath is half-king perfection. Chapter 74. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Total shock. Every eye in the place snapped to Gu Qingchen on the stage. Even the Kanglan Holy Land elder, a god king overseeing the event from the central platform, shot open his previously half-closed eyes, staring at Gu Qingchen in disbelief. Half-king perfection. So young. A half-king perfection at that age? Holy crap, young. That's not young, that's a freakin' toddler. The gathered kings were losing it, a 6 or 7-year-old kid reaching half-king perfection. What did that even mean? Future god kings, future emperors, at that age, couldn't dream of such power. Especially those cultivators who'd warned Gu Qingchen this wasn't some playground. Their heads were spinning. This was insane. If a half-king entering the ring was playing, what had they been doing? Playing in the sandbox? And in the ring, Yu Lingxian gasped, her astonishment mirroring the crowd's, but before she could fully process it, the impatient Gu Qingchen charged. Eat this! The little guy roared, a sonic boom erupting from him. Guided by his spiritual power, it morphed into a dragon phantom, roaring as it hurtled toward Yu Lingxian. Little brat, you've got talent, but you can't bridge the gap between the king and half-king realms. Yu Lingxian spat back, but she knew better than to treat Gu Qingchen like a regular kid. With a flick of her wrist, the jade bracelet chimed. Xianwang realm's spiritual power surged, forming a silver-white halo. It radiated an aura of pure annihilation. The Kanglan Nirvana technique. A top-tier Kanglan Holy Land secret. Said to be only mastered by heavenly kings, yet Yu Sheng is using it. Unbelievable. Yu Sheng was holding back. The crowd was in awe. The silver-white halo, humming with destructive energy, sliced through the air and slammed into Gu Qingchen's dragon phantom. With a soft pop, the dragon was gone. The audience shook their heads. The realm gap is too wide. Half-king and true king were worlds apart. This upstart kid was terrifyingly talented, but too young. A few more years, reaching king level, maybe he could surpass Yu Lingxian, but now, he was outmatched. Even a run-of-the-mill early-stage Xianwang would be too much, let alone the Kanglan saint, a master of top-tier skills and martial arts. Against anyone in the same realm, she'd be unstoppable. Yu Lingxuan's eyes turned icy, watching the dragon dissipate into mist. You're a monster, sure, but there's a gap you can't cross right now. A cold light flashed in her eyes, whoosh, star. Instead of dispelling the Kanglan silence technique, she raised her hand. The rings chimed again, her spiritual power pouring into the silver-white halo. Power surged through the arena, and the halo hurtled towards Gu Qingchen like a meteor. Yu Lingxuan's intent was clear: crush Gu Qingchen in one blow. Erase this potential emperor-level threat. Remembering the talent Gu Qingchen displayed, many regretted what was about to happen, but Gu Qingchen, seeing the incoming halo, wasn't scared. He looked up, a cold glint in his eye. Insurmountable? I don't think so. Slowly, he clenched his fist, the aura of destruction in his pupils growing. Then, to everyone's shock, the kid roared like thunder, took a step, and raised his fist, crack, star, the air crackled with energy. In Yu Lingxuan's horrified gaze, and to the audience's utter shock, Gu Qingqian's punch shattered the annihilation aura. Shattered it. You're right, there is a gap between us. Yu Lingxian had said that to Gu Qingqian. Now, he tossed it right back. Silence fell over the southern cultivators. Gu Qingqian became a blur, closing the distance to Yu Lingxian in a heartbeat. Yu Lingxian barely had time to block, but every attack of hers was avoided, while every strike of Gu Qingqian found her defense. Yu Lingxian should have been dominating with her superior realm and spiritual power. But she couldn't mount a counterattack. At first, she'd managed a few strikes, showing at least a semblance of offense. Now, she could barely defend. Even the most clueless spectators realized Yu Lingxian was struggling. Someone pinch me, am I dreaming? Maybe I got up too fast. Am I seeing a 6-year-old kick the Kanglan saint's butt? A half-king, beating a king? Am I hallucinating? I thought I was the #1 genius, but I'm not as good as a 6-year-old. That the crowd was stunned, especially those who'd previously lost to Yu Lingxian. Even the Kanglan Holy Land elder stroked his beard and accidentally yanked out a chunk without noticing. The Jiang family and Xianin Pavilion cultivators were equally speechless. The Xianin Pavilion people were somewhat excused. They hadn't known Gu Changqing's background, but the Jiang family knew Gu Yunxi and Gu Qingqian. Gu Qingqian's realm had been Calamity Realm at most. It had only been a few months. How much could he improve? They'd assumed he was here for fun, but they'd forgotten Gu Qingqian had reached the Calamity Realm at a ridiculous age, and couldn't be judged by normal standards, half-king perfection. He was actually beating Yu Lingxian, the Kanglan saintess, and dominating her. Such talent, compared to him, the southern cultivators were garbage. Thinking of their past, they felt like they'd been wasting their lives. The crowd was reeling. And Yu Lingxian? She tried her best, but Gu Qingqian was crushing her. The oppressive force drove her mad. But just when Yu Lingxian was about to give up, Gu Qingqian froze. Huh? Yu Lingxian was confused. The audience was equally puzzled. Then they saw why Gu Qingqian had stopped. Beneath the ring, a porcelain doll girl had appeared. She was a little older than Gu Qingqian and looked quite similar, but where he was heroic, she was delicate, like a small pearl, not fully grown, but already brilliant. And the moment she appeared, Gu Qingqian scurried to the edge of the ring, looking respectful and attentive. Had enough? Yes. Then you know what to do. I do. Just when everyone was scratching their heads, Gu Qingqian bowed slightly to Yu Lingxian and announced, I lost. I concede. Yu Lingxian, the audience. Are you mocking me? Yu Lingxuan's face darkened. Under the ring, the jade-like girl hopped into the ring. Next, I'll fight you. Don't chicken out. The venue went deathly silent. Chapter 75. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Another little girl. What's the deal? What's her connection to Gu Qingqian? The southern cultivators, after a moment of stunned silence, buzzed with renewed excitement. The little girl looked like a porcelain doll in her purple dress, cute as a button and radiating sunshine, but her face was serious as she fixed her gaze on Yu Lingxian. Each word she spoke was measured and deliberate, her tone so commanding and powerful that everyone watching held their breath. It was like watching an empress, not a kid barely out of diapers. This little powerhouse was, of course, Gu Yunxi. She and Gu Qingqian had a plan. She was here to avenge their mother and give the Saint of Kanglan a serious beatdown. That's why Gu Qingqian went first, only to forfeit. It was all to keep the Saint of Kanglan on the stage. Yu Lingxian was about to lose it. She was the Saint of Kanglan, for crying out loud. First, she was humiliated by some snot-nosed brat, and now another one was stepping up, daring to challenge her face to face. Did they think she was a pushover? Still, looking at the little girl who bore a striking resemblance to Gu Qingqian, Yu Lingxian couldn't afford to be careless. She glared at Gu Yunxi, teeth clenched. What's your name? And what's your connection to that little punk? My name is Gu Yunxi. As for the little punk you mentioned, Gu Yunxi raised her eyes slightly. She looked like a kid, but the chill in her gaze sent shivers down the spines of many spectators. He's not a little punk. He's my brother, Gu Qingchen. And for calling him that, I'm going to teach you some manners. Fine. 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 A dangerous glint flashed in Yu Lingxuan's eyes. I'd like to see you try. In a flash, Yu Lingxian made the first move. She was furious and didn't care about appearances anymore. Not only that, but as she attacked, the spiritual energy in her body surged, igniting into a fierce blaze that boosted her power even more. She'd learned her lesson from Gu Qingchen. Arrogant as she was, Yu Lingxian was approaching this fight with caution. Eat this. Yu Lingxuan's hands flew in a blur. In the blink of an eye, she formed 36 seals, channeling the boiling, burning spiritual power within her. Boom! She summoned a dark golden bolt of lightning, which instantly morphed into a spear. She aimed it directly at Gu Yunqi. Is that the Xian Lei Petian Ju? A secret technique from Kanglan Holy Land? Did Yu Lingxian actually master it? The lightning spear pulsed with dark golden light, crackling with terrifying energy that sent waves of fear through the audience, especially among the super geniuses from rival holy lands. As insiders, they knew what each other was capable of. Yu Lingxuan's dark golden lightning spear was a terrifying killing technique that only elders above the God King level in Kanglan Holy Land could wield. One strike from that spear could kill a God King in the same realm. But the cost was insane. Even with Yu Lingxian burning her spiritual energy, she would still be hard-pressed to fully control it. The situation was clear. The elders of Kanglan Holy Land had clearly summoned this killing technique and sealed it within Yu Lingxuan's body, just in case she faced an opponent at the southern ceremony that she couldn't handle. Shameless? Maybe. Effective? Definitely. Even if Yu Lingxuan's realm couldn't fully utilize the spear's power, cutting its potential in half, it was still enough to obliterate anyone below the late Xian King stage. Even a late-stage Xian King would be critically injured by that spear. And Yu Lingxuan's opponent was 6 or 7-year-old Gu Yunqi. No matter how talented she was, she probably wasn't much stronger than Gu Qingchen. How could she possibly stand up to that kind of power? But seeing Yu Lingxian unleash a lightning-based attack, Gu Yunqi's eyes took on a peculiar glint. You asked for it. Don't blame me for what happens next. The little girl's eyes flashed. Her figure danced like a purple butterfly. Facing the terrifying lightning spear, she showed no fear. Instead, she charged forward. Looking for a dirt nap, a cold light blazed in Yu Lingxuan's eyes as she unleashed the spear. The sound of it ripping through the air was deafening, and Yu Lingxuan's face bloomed into a triumphant smile. She couldn't wait to see Gu Yunqi get blown to smithereens. But as her eyes landed on Gu Yunqi, her expression froze. Gu Yunqi's own aura exploded, the sheer force radiating from her rival that of a true King realm powerhouse, momentarily stopping everyone's hearts. King. King realm. She's a king. The same level as the Saint of Kanglan. Even the God Kings of Kanglan Holy Land shot to their feet, staring at Gu Yunqi in disbelief. Forget about them. Yu Lingxuan's mind raced to the lightning spear she had just thrown and instantly grew confident. So what if you're King realm? Against the Xian Lei Petian spear. Before Yu Lingxian could finish her thought, a shattering sound cut her off. The Xian Lei Petian spear hurtled towards Gu Yunqi in a blaze and then was abruptly stopped by the little girl, and then she suddenly exerted force. Take it back, the little girl roared, her king realm pressure shaking the entire arena. Then, to the shock of everyone present, the Xian Lei Petian spear, capable of crippling a late-stage Xian king, was redirected back at Yu Lingxian with a flick of her wrist. Yu Lingxian scrambled to dodge, but she was no match for the speed of her own Xian Lei Petian spear. Even though Gu Yunqi's touch had weakened the blow, it still slammed into Yu Lingxian with full force, and a bolt of lightning sent her flying backward, where she crashed heavily near the edge of the stage. Whether it was intentional or not, much of the lightning was concentrated on Yu Lingxuan's cheek, leaving her face scorched black. Her mouth opened and closed uselessly, her tongue numb, exactly as Gu Yunqi had predicted. This. One hit and she beat Yu Lingxian. that the crowd was speechless, looking at the battered Yulingxian. Nobody knew what to say. But before anyone could recover from their shock, Gu Yunxi, like Gu Qingqian before her, didn't pursue the victory. She simply conceded and left the stage. Then, under everyone's gaze, she leaped off the stage and ran back to Jiang Lianqin, looking up with a joyful face. "Mom! How was my performance? Was it good?" Hearing his sister's words, Gu Qingqian, who returned to his parents, couldn't sit still anymore. He immediately jumped out of Gu Yuan's arms and came to Jiang Lianqin's side. "Mom, wasn't my performance just now also great?" Hearing the words of the siblings, Jiang Lianqin and Gu Changqing couldn't help but smile at each other. At this time, everyone's attention had already fallen on them. Just hearing the words of Gu Yunxi and Gu Qingqian, they were all shocked, and their eyes looking at Jiang Lianqin were full of astonishment. What did they hear? Those two little monsters called the woman in white dress mother. Then who was she? When Yulingxian heard the voice, she couldn't help but cast her eyes on Jiang Lianqin. Immediately, her body trembled suddenly, and her eyes were filled with unstoppable astonishment and shock. This face! Jiang Lianqin's face! She felt familiar with it when she just went out. At this moment, she finally remembered it, and her body began to tremble involuntarily. How could it be her? Just when Yulingxian was trembling, as if she felt her gaze, Jiang Lianqin, who was praising the two little guys, slowly raised her head and looked at Yulingxian, who was trembling on the stage, with a smile on her lips, but that smile, when it fell into Yulingxian's eyes, made her body cold. She subconsciously wanted to open her eyes, but she didn't have time to speak. Swish! The white skirt fluttered, and the skirt fluttered. Under the gazes of the audience, some in awe, some in doubt, and some in curiosity, Jiang Lianqin's figure, like a fairy from the Moon Palace, landed gracefully on the battle stage, looking at Yulingxian in the distance, and spoke softly, her voice calm, but it allowed Yulingxian to completely verify her guess, and her heart was in turmoil. Han Qin, Gu family, Jiang Lianqin. Please teach me, Saint Kanglin. Chapter 76. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jiang Lianqin, Yulingxian hadn't heard that name in ages. Back when she'd just become the saint of Kanglin Holy Land, she was full of ambition and riding high. She traveled around the south under the protection of her guardian, only to get crushed in some backwater place called Han Qin. The funny thing was, Yulingxian barely remembered the name of the person who'd given her a taste of defeat, because right after embarrassing her, her own protector had crippled the woman. Yulingxian hadn't stopped him, she'd even condoned it. As the saint of Kanglin Holy Land and Yu Baifeng's sister, she couldn't afford to have any blemishes. And if there were any, she'd erase them. Jiang Lianqin, no matter how talented, was now just a useless cripple. She wasn't even worth Yulingxian's memory until now, when Jiang Lianqin stepped back into the arena. Yulingxian suddenly unearthed those memories she'd buried deep down, and a wave of fear washed over her. It's you. The words slipped out, her tone betraying a fear she couldn't hide, startling the onlookers. Thanks to Kanglin Holy Land's tight control of information, few knew about what had happened back then, but Jiang Lianqin's expression remained calm. That's right, me. Surprised to see me? That their exchange was brief, but it sent shockwaves through the crowd. After all, the Gu siblings had challenged Yulingxian twice, and both times, they'd thrown the match before actually beating her. It was humiliating. A total trampling of Yulingxian's pride. It was hard not to think there was some kind of vendetta involved. Now, their conversation seemed to confirm it, but the fear in Yulingxian's voice had the audience buzzing. What kind of opponent could inspire such fear in the saint of Kanglin? Just as they were trying to figure it out, Jiang Lianqin stepped forward, her aura surging, the pressure of an early-stage Changqing washing over them. She and Yulingxian were in the same realm, but the moment that power rose, it completely overshadowed Yulingxian's aura. That could only mean one thing: Jiang Lianqin was far stronger. To the spectators, it was impressive, but not entirely surprising. It made sense that the mother of those two little monsters, the Gu siblings, would have some serious talent, but Yulingxian was losing it. Impossible. That's impossible. Weren't you? She choked on her words, stopping mid-sentence. She didn't want anyone to know what had happened back then. But even if Yu Lingxian wouldn't say it, Jiang Lianxin would. She gave a cold smile, staring at Yu Lingxian with pure hatred in her eyes. What were you going to say? That your protector crippled me back then, right? After I beat you fair and square, you let your protector attack me and turn me into a cripple. Then you conveniently forgot all about that battle. Over time, you actually started believing you had no equals. It's laughable, really. Jiang Lianxin took a step forward with each word. By the time she finished, she was only 3 feet away from Yu Lingxian, and her overwhelming power made Yu Lingxian nearly crumble. The crowd below the stage was in an uproar. Yu Lingxian's rise had been meteoric, her record was practically spotless. In the south, she was already a legend. Kanglan Holy Land had high hopes for her, even praising her as the South's greatest genius who would follow in her brother's footsteps and make it onto the spirit list. She was a superstar in the hearts of countless people, but now, listening to Jiang Lianxin and seeing the fear in Yu Lingxian's eyes, everyone's perspective had changed. Yu Lingxian had a past like that? They thought Kanglan Holy Land had produced an unparalleled genius, but now it seemed, they didn't know about her genius status, but Kanglan Holy Land's shamelessness was definitely unparalleled in the south. They couldn't handle a defeat, so they had their protector cripple the opponent. They couldn't take the loss. Draw your sword. Aren't you the saint of Kanglan? Aren't you supposed to be on the stage? Or are you too scared to fight me? What are you waiting for? The South's #1 genius? Jiang Lianxin's voice was like thunder, each word sharp and distinct, exploding in Yu Lingxian's mind and almost shattering her consciousness. Just then. Enough. On the central high platform, the old god king of Kanglan Holy Land roared like a lion, pointing a finger down, his spiritual power coalescing into a long sword that slashed down, separating Jiang Lianxin and Yu Lingxian. Immediately, a wave of spiritual power washed over Yu Lingxian, whisking her back to her platform. The Saint of Kanglan has won 2 matches in a row. According to the rules, she's allowed to take a break, the old god king said coldly. Yu Lingxian, now under the protection of the god king, finally regained her composure, her gaze returned to the stage, fixed on Jiang Lianxin, with murder in her eyes. She'd been overwhelmed by Jiang Lianxin's power and couldn't think straight, but now that she was off the stage, things would be much easier. Kanglan Holy Land had countless tricks up its sleeve. They might not be overflowing with secrets like the mysterious thunder heartbreaking spear, but they had more than enough for her to choose from. If one trump card wasn't enough to kill Jiang Lianxin, then she'd just prepare a few more. Once she was off the stage, anything was possible. Jiang Lianxin. Have you forgotten the rules of the southern ceremony? Wait for me to rest, and then I'll face you again. Yu Lingxian sneered, ready to head into the Holy Land and get help from the emperors. Watching her actions, the expressions of the other participants became even more interesting. They couldn't help but look at Yu Lingxian with contempt, but their opinions obviously didn't affect Yu Lingxian. All they could do was watch her head towards the Kanglan Holy Land. But then, get down. Just as Yu Lingxian was considering which trump card to use, Changqing stood up in the Han and Qin Empire's formation, his voice calm and cold, under the almost horrified gaze of the crowd the moment he spoke. Boom! A wave of spiritual power erupted from Changqing's body, forming a massive hand that was 100 feet long. With a gentle tug, Yu Lingxian, who was about to enter the Holy Land, was dragged back to the ring. I told you to get down, didn't you hear me? Chapter 77. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ballsy. The whole place went wild when Changqing snatched Yu Lingxian and dragged her back to the ring. Everyone was stunned by his move. Even the old god king from Kanglan Holy Land was caught off guard when Changqing shoved Yu Lingxian back onto the platform. The old god king snapped out of it, roaring and slamming his palm down. Immense spiritual power formed a giant handprint, hurtling towards Changqing's head with earth-shattering force. Crack! The air exploded. As if unable to withstand the might of this perfect god king and on the verge of collapse, the Han Qin Empire cultivators, caught in the handprint's path, went pale. The Jiang family was terrified. Even their ancestor trembled, instinctively wanting to bail and ditch Jiang Baiwei and the others, but just as the Han Qin people started to panic, Gu Changqing grinned. "Ballsy, huh? You ain't seen nothin' yet," the words barely left his lips when, whoosh, Gu Changqing turned into a streak of light, like a meteor. He shot across the arena, reaching the central platform in front of the Kanglan Holy Land's elder god king in a heartbeat. He casually reached out and pressed his hand on the elder's forehead, then bam, applied some serious pressure, puff, the Kanglan elder, a powerhouse in the perfect god-king realm, didn't even get a chance to scream. Gu Changqing's palm crushed his head into his chest. He was dead on the spot. The powerful spiritual handprint, cut off from its source of power, instantly dissipated, crumbling into nothing. A stunned silence fell. Everyone stared blankly at the figure standing on the central platform. Waves of shock crashed through their minds. That Kanglan elder was a real deal, top-tier god king. Combined with the secret techniques handed down in Kanglan Holy Land, his combat strength was off the charts. Even the previous god king of the Yanlong dynasty wouldn't last 3 rounds against him. Yet this guy, this powerhouse, against Gu Changqing, he was a total pushover, taken out with a single palm while Gu Changqing barely broke a sweat. What kind of insane power was that? The Xianin Pavilion's female cultivators watched Gu Changqing on the high platform with wide eyes, especially Fairy Lu and Bai Yueling, their gazes filled with something strange. Gu Changqing's previous display of god-king power had already floored them, but they never expected that was just the tip of the iceberg. Bai Yueling, especially, looking at Gu Changqing, tall and imposing on the platform, his white robes billowing like a banished immortal, she couldn't help glancing at Jiang Lianxin on stage, envy blazing in her eyes. Jiang Lianxin is not only talented but snagged Senior Gu, too. Talk about hitting the jackpot. As for the Jiang family, well, no need to say anything. When the Jiang family ancestor saw Elder Kanglan get his head smashed by Gu Changqing, he shook like a leaf, wishing he could disappear into a hole to avoid Gu Changqing's gaze. If Gu Changqing noticed any lingering resentment from him and splattered his brains like a melon, who would he even complain to? And regret gnawed at Jiang Baiwei's heart. After all, he should have been my husband. Jiang Baiwei's fists clenched so tight her nails dug into her flesh, drawing blood, but she didn't even notice. Her eyes flicked between Jiang Lianxin and Gu Changqing. Regret surged through her like a tidal wave. But neither Jiang Lianxin nor Gu Changqing paid her any attention whatsoever. After offing the Kanglan elder in charge of security, Yu Lingxian was completely flustered. Especially when she realized Jiang Lianxin's eyes were back on her. Fear finally bloomed in Yu Lingxuan's heart. She instinctively stumbled back, staring at Jiang Lianxin and babbling, "Don't do anything crazy. You can still salvage this. Don't be stupid." She glanced at Gu Changqing on the central platform and shouted, "I can put in a good word for you. We can still make a deal. Don't be rash." Yu Lingxian was sure the Holy Land would get the news and react soon, but she wasn't confident she could hold out until then. Based on Gu Changqing's earlier display of power, she had no doubt either Gu Changqing or Jiang Lianxin could wipe her out in an instant, so she needed to stall. However, watching Jiang Lianxin's next move, Yu Lingxian grew increasingly desperate. Ignoring her pleas, Jiang Lianxin stepped forward and attacked like lightning. Boom. The same Xuanwang level force erupted. Yu Lingxian instinctively used her footwork to dodge, creating hundreds of afterimages, but against Jiang Lianxin, it was useless. She simply raised her hand and effortlessly cut through the illusions, grabbing Yu Lingxuan's real body. In an instant, spiritual power coursed through all 365 of Yu Lingxuan's acupoints, completely sealing and imprisoning her cultivation. Sensing Jiang Lianxin's terrifying strength, Yu Lingxian panicked. "What are you doing? Didn't you hear me? We can make peace." "Make peace? No need," Jiang Lianxin said casually, looking at the now terrified Yu Lingxian. "As for what I'm going to do, well, that's simple. I'm settling the score." Hearing the murderous intent in Jiang Lianxin's words, Yu Lingxuan's heart completely crumbled. She started to beg for mercy, but Jiang Lianxin wasn't in the mood to listen. seeing Jiang Lianxin was about to make a move, Yu Lingxian finally snapped and screamed. No! You can't kill me. My brother is Yu Baifeng. He's 9th on the spirit list. The direct disciple of a god emperor big shot in Daluo Tiangong. If you kill me, that god emperor won't let you get away with it. He'll go after you, your family, your husband, everyone. God emperor big shot. Daluo Tiangong. Hearing the name, Jiang Lianxin hesitated. She knew the clan now had another Xuanhuang level warrior, a senior rescued by her husband, but Xianhuang was just a god emperor. She wasn't sure if she could stand against a spirit domain big shot of Daluo Tiangong. Seeing Jiang Lianxin's hesitation, Yu Lingxian felt she'd found a lifeline. The panic faded, replaced by a hint of her old arrogance. Looks like you know my identity isn't just the Kanglan Saintess. Even if you're not afraid of Kanglan Holy Land, you can't afford to offend Daluo Heavenly Palace in the spirit realm. Let me go. Before she could finish, Gu Changqing's calm voice cut through from the central platform. Lianxin, don't hesitate. Kill her. Jiang Lianxin instinctively looked up and met her husband's tender smile. A mere divine emperor. Nothing to worry about, Gu Changqing said. Chapter 78. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hearing Gu Changqing's words, Jiang Lianxin's heart skipped a beat. Husband. She whispered. She took a deep breath, saying nothing, her hesitation gone. At this moment, even a second's pause would be a disservice to her husband's love. She gently channeled her spiritual power, shaping it into a sword, and aimed it at Yu Lingxian's chest, whose gaze was filled with disbelief. No, no, no. I'm the Saintess of Kanglan, the Emperor's sister. You can't kill me. You wouldn't dare. Yu Lingxian's words came faster and faster, her tone increasingly desperate as she struggled, but, thwack, in the stunned silence of the arena, before countless onlookers, Jiang Lianxin's spiritual sword plunged downward without hesitation. Blood splattered across the stage, silencing the entire venue. The Kanglan Saintess, Yu Lingxian, was dead. Dead, really dead. Jiang Lianxin raised her hand, dispelled the spiritual sword, and let Yu Lingxian's lifeless body fall to the stage with a heavy thud. Only then did the spectators below snap out of their stupor. They stared at the deceased Yu Lingxian, still reeling from disbelief. The Yanlong dynasty god king was trembling, his eyes filled with unconcealed fear, bordering on terror, as he looked at Gu Changqing. He'd previously considered Gu Changqing just another old powerhouse. But after witnessing Gu Changqing casually off the Kanglan elder, a god king capable of challenging even a half-emperor, he developed a deep-seated dread, and now, seeing Gu Changqing egging his wife on to kill Yu Lingxian, the Kanglan Saintess, he couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. This guy either has some insane ace up his sleeve, maybe even backing from an emperor, to be so bold. Or he's a complete psycho who doesn't give a damn about the consequences. The former was someone the Yanlong dynasty couldn't afford to offend. The latter was someone he, the Yanlong dynasty's god king elder, couldn't hope to restrain. He even dared to kill the Kanglan Saintess. If he hadn't backed down and tried to fight this old Gu Changqing to the bitter end, there was no guarantee he wouldn't have ended up like that Kanglan Holy Land elder. Nevertheless, it was a shock. Staring at Yu Lingxian's corpse, the Yanlong dynasty god king couldn't help but shake his head. Killing the Kanglan Saintess here might be satisfying, but it's asking for a world of trouble, that he was willing to bet that the higher-ups at Kanglan never expected Jiang Lianxin and Gu Changqing to actually go through with it. After all, this was the Kanglan Holy Land Saintess. And it happened in the Kanglan Holy Land's own territory. They were probably still in shock, like the rest of the audience. But once they recovered, a major conflict was inevitable. The Kanglan Holy Land wasn't just any old emperor-level power. In the southern part of the spirit realm, Kanglan's dominance ranked among the top 3. Even if Gu Changqing has the strength of an emperor, the founder of Kanglan Holy Land is no ordinary emperor, but an old monster who's reached the late stage of the emperor realm, having cultivated for nearly 1,000 years. Many powerhouses at the venue shared the Yanlong dynasty God King sentiment. As predicted, when the Kanglan Holy Land powerhouses finally caught up, the strongmen of Kanglan Holy Land finally reacted, before Jiang Lianxin could leave the stage, boom. Boom. Boom, star, from deep within Kanglan City, shrouded in the boundless spiritual mist of the Kanglan Holy Land, a series of immensely powerful and terrifying auras erupted. The aftershocks alone were enough to crush ordinary king-level cultivators. Terrifying pillars of light shot into the sky. Each pillar representing a great emperor-level power, wearing red robes and bearing the Kanglan Elder insignia. Red robes and insignias, emperor-level cultivation. Kanglan Holy Land, the 5 Palm Seal Elders are out. Now things are really gonna get interesting. In the distance, the 5 pillars of light loomed like bottomless chasms. The faces of the 5 emperor-level elders of the Kanglan Holy Land were ashen. They stared at Jiang Lianxin and Gu Changqing, their murderous intent practically oozing from their eyes. Just as the Yanlong dynasty God King suspected, they had initially planned to intervene. But after Yu Lingxian revealed her identity, they assumed Jiang Lianxin and Gu Changqing wouldn't dare to attack Yu Lingxian again, not in a million years. But they never expected these 2 juniors to be so suicidal. Who would have thought such arrogant little thieves existed in the south? Daring to kill the saintess of my Kanglan. And to do it in Kanglan City, just as everyone was distracted by the aura of the 5 emperor elders of Kanglan Holy Land, boom, a cold voice echoed from the depths of the Kanglan Holy Land. Under the horrified gaze of countless eyes, a man in a scarlet robe embroidered with images of mountains and rivers, flashing thousands of spiritual patterns, appeared. The spiritual energy between heaven and earth seemed to stagnate, suppressed by his mere presence. Such an awe-inspiring phenomenon needed no explanation. The identity of the scarlet-robed elder was unmistakable. Kanglan Holy Land, the one who has not come out of retreat for 100 years, the heavenly empress, the founder Kanglan, the cultivators present held their breath, shock etched across their faces. Kanglan Holy Land is royally pissed this time, a cultivator whispered. Looking at Jiang Lianxin and Gu Changqing on the stage, he had already sealed their fate. 5 emperors. 1 heavenly empress. Who could withstand such a lineup? In the southern spirit realm, this was as good as it gets. Even the other 2 major holy lands in the south, Kanglan's peers, could only hope for a draw against such a force, not to mention that this was Kanglan City, Kanglan Holy Land's own turf. As the founder Kanglan, she could mobilize the entire Holy Land's formations with a thought, empowering herself. With the advantage of home ground, it was no exaggeration to say that the founder Kanglan's combat power was unmatched in the south. Therefore, upon seeing the founder Kanglan appear, many looked at Jiang Lianxin with pity. At the very least, Jiang Lianxin had shown remarkable talent. She was a once-in-a-millennium talent in the south. And her 2 children. What a shame. She shouldn't have been so reckless. Now, she's dragged herself and her children into a hopeless situation. Even if an emperor backs these 2, it's impossible to protect them. But some looked at Gu Changqing with flickering eyes. They secretly harbored expectations. The forces with these thoughts were the other 2 southern holy lands, the peers of Kanglan Holy Land. The 3 holy lands might appear united, but they were secretly scheming, locked in a constant battle for supremacy. Gu Changqing's earlier decisive killing of the Kanglan Elder and Jiang Lianxin's execution of Yu Lingxian had been done in one fell swoop. Such a domineering and powerful display made it hard not to suspect that this God King had some stronger trump cards hidden up his sleeve. For example, another emperor. Chapter 79. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Kanglan Patriarch was clearly worried about this too, so, the moment he appeared, he immediately took action. His 5 emperor-level elders scattered instantly, the vast formation protecting Kanglan Holy Land activated, shielding the Kanglan Patriarch and boosting his power, while also guarding against surprise attacks. Watching this unfold, the envoys from the other 2 holy lands inwardly cursed the old man's slyness. Being so cautious against a young god king, they also gave up on Gu Changqing. At this point, they figured he was done for. The Kanglan patriarch felt the same. With everything in place, he looked at Gu Changqing, his voice like ice. "Young man, are you ready to die for offending my Kanglan and killing our saint?" He stepped forward, adding, "Or will you have your elders come and atone for your sins with their lives?" As he spoke, his aura surged, like a mountain pressing down on Gu Changqing, terrifying the nearby cultivators, but Gu Changqing remained calm, seemingly unaffected by the patriarch's aura. He only raised an eyebrow, a faint smile playing on his lips, when he heard the reference to his elders. "Let my elders die." Ha ha ha. Gu Changqing understood the old man's game. He was trying to sniff out if Gu Changqing was hiding a powerful background and wanted to get that information before making a final decision. But Gu Changqing had no backup coming. He had a heavenly protector and a divine emperor retinue, but they were too strong for this fight. "You and your Kanglan Holy Land aren't worth their time." Gu Changqing rose, his body radiating power. To the shock of everyone, instead of dodging, he charged straight toward the Kanglan patriarch's overwhelming aura. "You've got a death wish." The Kanglan patriarch, enraged, roared and swung his hand, ready to kill Gu Changqing. The world's spiritual energy converged in his palm, forming a dark purple lightning spear, the very Xianlei Patian Ju that Yu Lingxian had used. But in the Kanglan patriarch's hands, it was terrifying, seemingly capable of tearing the sky itself. The immense power forced onlookers to retreat, fearing the spear's raw energy. "Die." The Kanglan patriarch roared. He swung the huge lightning spear, pulsing with divine power, slamming it down on Gu Changqing. Crack! Crack, crack, crack. Amidst an explosion that sounded like 1,000 angry bees, cracks spread across the lightning spear like spiderwebs. Then, to the horror of the Kanglan patriarch and his 5 emperors, Gu Changqing casually swung his sword. They watched as the Xianlei sky-breaking spear, which even a heavenly queen would struggle against, was shattered by his strike. Heaven, perfected heavenly emperor. After a stunned silence, a cultivator finally snapped out of it and shouted in disbelief. Only someone who had reached the pinnacle of the heavenly emperor realm could destroy the spear so effortlessly. In other words, the mysterious powerhouse from the Han and Qin Empire wasn't a god king at all. He was a peerless old monster, a perfected heavenly emperor. The Kanglan patriarch and his elders stood speechless, mouths agape, hardly believing their eyes. When Gu Changqing's gaze landed on them, they felt the coldness in his eyes. They gulped. Involuntarily, the Kanglan patriarch no longer dared to fight a perfected emperor. That was enough to wipe out the entire Kanglan Holy Land. Even with the formation, at best, it would only weaken the emperor, but the Holy Land would be destroyed. That was a losing deal. Realizing this, the Kanglan patriarch abruptly retreated, calling out to stop the fight. He could always wait for someone from Daoyuo Tiangong to come and settle things. "Friend, let's talk this over. It was just a disagreement with Yu Lingxian. Now that she's been executed, let's call it even. I, Kanglan, won't hold you responsible for killing our saint, but you should go to Daoyuo Tiangong yourself." The Kanglan patriarch spoke rapidly, his tone remarkably sincere. But before he could finish, Gu Changqing cut him off with a sneer. "Who said you could let it go? It wasn't just Yu Lingxian who crippled Jiang Lianqin. At most, she gave her consent. The ones who actually did it were the king-level elders of Kanglan Holy Land. Every wrong has its perpetrator, every debt has its creditor. Kanglan Holy Land thought they could get out of this so easily. They had another thing coming. Besides, Gu Changqing had clearly sensed the Kanglan Holy Land's murderous intent from the start. "Come and die with me." Gu Changqing raised his hand, unleashing another sword of light, a rainbow of power that split the sky and shot toward the Kanglan patriarch. "Damn it!" The Kanglan patriarch cursed under his breath. With no time to dodge, he immediately called on the spiritual power around him. He drew on the power of the entire formation, boosting his aura rapidly. Even if it wasn't true emperor level, the gap wasn't big. Empowered, the Kanglan patriarch found his courage and roared, meeting the attack head-on. And then, a gout of blood erupted. Gu Changqing's sword shattered everything the Kanglen Patriarch could muster, including the formation, and still had enough force to send him flying thousands of feet backward, gushing blood and his aura rapidly fading. As for the 5 Emperor-level elders of the Kanglen Holy Land, they were reduced to ashes, along with the entire formation, by Gu Changqing's sword. How is this possible? Everyone was speechless, feeling like they were in a dream. Did the Kanglen Patriarch really lose that easily? Was the gap that enormous? Gu Changqing's power has exceeded anything a normal emperor can achieve. The God King of the Yanlong dynasty was shaking. His gaze at Gu Changqing was filled with fear, and a touch of relief. He was lucky he hadn't really become Gu Changqing's enemy. Severely injured by Gu Changqing's sword, the Kanglen Patriarch watched his formation and elders turn to dust. His heart was filled with fear. Seeing Gu Changqing about to strike, the Kanglen Patriarch begged, "Spare me." Gu Changqing ignored him and raised his hand to finish him off with a sword, but at that moment, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from the meeting room below, engulfing the entire area, shielding the Kanglen Patriarch. Everyone stared in astonishment. That's another perfected emperor. Chapter 80. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Everyone watched in stunned silence. A young man in green robes, a playful glint in his eyes, defied gravity. He stepped forward, shielding the Kanglen Patriarch. His robes were simple, the standard issue of the Kanglen Holy Land, yet, the aura he projected was undeniable. Emperor perfection. The sheer incongruity of it all left everyone reeling, including the Kanglen Patriarch, who had narrowly escaped death. You. Zhao Qing. How did you get this powerful? Zhao Qing. Open your eyes, old fool. Take another look. Who am I? The green-robed young man sneered at the Patriarch's words. A surge of spiritual energy transformed into a black mist that engulfed him. A strange, soul-devouring aura emanated from the darkness. People recoiled, instinctively wanting to distance themselves from the unsettling youth. Fortunately, the black fog dissipated quickly, lasting only a few breaths. Then, with a bang, the black fog receded into him. His form had completely changed, revealing an old man cloaked in black. He had a hooked nose, beady eyes like a vulture, and a gaze that flashed with cold light, but the most striking feature was the blood-red sickle emblazoned on the back of his black robes. The symbol was unfamiliar to many cultivators in the south, but Patriarch Kanglen, standing at the pinnacle of the south and privy to some knowledge of the forces beyond, recognized it instantly. You're from the soul-devouring sect. A soul-binding envoy. What are you doing here? Patriarch Kanglen's voice was a horrified scream. Fear, undisguised, filled his eyes as he stared at the old man in black. The envoys of the Holy Land watching the battle below also visibly paled at the mention of the soul-devouring sect. The soul-devouring sect was a clandestine organization, its influence spanning far and wide. Its true strength remained unknown. They rarely surfaced, but when they did, a bloody storm followed. Now, the soul-devouring sect had emerged in the southern spirit realm. Did this foreshadow a coming catastrophe for the south? Quiet. Unless you want to die, shut your trap. The old man in black's cold tone was chilling. His words were surprisingly effective. The Kanglen Patriarch immediately fell silent. The soul-devouring sect was notorious for its depravity and cruelty. Now, seeing a soul-devouring sect's soul-binding envoy seemingly on his side, the Patriarch couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. The old man in black ignored the Kanglen Patriarch's thoughts. If the soul-devouring sect hadn't spent a long time setting up shop in the Kanglen Holy Land, he wouldn't have revealed himself at this moment. Young man, ignorance is forgivable. Considering your unawareness of my sect's plans, I'll overlook your forcing my hand. However, you will not destroy the Kanglen Holy Land today. The old man in black spoke softly, but with an unyielding conviction, but Gu Changqing's response was even more assertive. Won't destroy it? Your opinion doesn't matter. Let me give you some advice. I'm ending the Kanglen Holy Land today. If you try to stop me, I'll kill you too. With that, he stepped forward, his eyes locked on the old man in black, the light of the spiritual sword blazing in his hand. Young man, don't be foolish. The black-clothed old man frowned at Gu Changqing's defiance. Did this kid not know the reputation of the soul-devouring sect? His tone was a stern warning, but the warning swiftly turned into a strangled cry. Because. Swoosh! A blinding sword beam sliced through the air, hurtling toward the old man in black like lightning, leaving him no time to react. He could only retreat with a strangled cry, and that retreat left the Kanglan patriarch directly in the path of the sword. Ah! The poor Kanglan patriarch, who had just been congratulating himself on his survival, never expected Gu Changqing to be so powerful and resolute, unafraid of even the soul-devouring sect, and to strike without hesitation. The sword beam flashed, cutting him in half, pulverizing him into countless specks of blood, killing him instantly. The patriarch is dead. Run for your lives. The inner sect elders and disciples of the Kanglan Holy Land were thrown into complete chaos at the death of the patriarch. Gu Changqing had already shattered the mountain gate formation and slaughtered the 5 elders. Now, the patriarch was dead at his hands. What was left for them but to await their doom? Before they could even move, Gu Changqing swung his sword again, unleashing a torrent of thousands of sword beams that rained down, annihilating every disciple, elder, and core member of the Kanglan Holy Land. If you're going to do something, do it swiftly and thoroughly. The whole process took only an instant. Even the old man in black, an Emperor of Heaven perfection expert, was caught off guard. By the time Gu Changqing sheathed his sword, the once thriving Kanglan Holy Land was reduced to a silent wasteland. Not just him, even the countless cultivators watching the meeting were dumbfounded. Their gazes were riveted to the mountain gate of the Kanglan Holy Land, their senses reeling. This was the Kanglan Holy Land. One of the top 3 superpowers in the south, wiped out completely. Everyone from the patriarch to the disciples, all dead. Some people even stabbed themselves with their flying swords to feel the sting and confirm that it wasn't a dream, but reality. The Kanglan Holy Land had truly been destroyed. This is huge. Some cultivators muttered in disbelief, staring at Gu Changqing in the sky. Their fear was almost palpable. The old man in black was consumed by rage. He had been working undercover in the Kanglan Holy Land, making arrangements for over a decade, just waiting for the right moment to launch a plan, subvert the South, and then use it as a stepping stone to advance the soul-devouring sect's grand ambitions, turning the entire spiritual domain into their hunting grounds. But here, at the hands of Gu Changqing, it had all unraveled. Killing the Kanglan patriarch wasn't enough. Even the disciples of the Kanglan Holy Land were wiped out, his meticulously laid plans ruined. How could he possibly tolerate this? Though consumed by fury, the strength displayed by Gu Changqing made him realize that he alone might not be able to subdue him. He suppressed his rage, fixed Gu Changqing with a deep, penetrating stare, and turned to leave. I'll remember this day. There will be a reckoning. Junior, think about how you'll explain this to the Holy Church. As he spoke, he was about to leave this place and inform the higher-ups of the soul-devouring sect. Dealing with Gu Changqing was secondary. The priority was to revise the countless derailed plans. But, just as he was about to depart, Gu Changqing's voice echoed. Give an explanation to the Holy Church. Fine. The words rang out. Under the astonished gaze of the crowd, Gu Changqing raised his sword once more and slashed at the old man in black. Here, this sword is my explanation.